Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, all Caribbean people, permit me the moment to acknowledge our host, President Irfan Ali, Vice President Barrett Jagdeo, and the executive members of the Guyanese administration and all the people of Guyana. I thank you very much for the invitation to participate in what I consider to be a seminal event. I also would like to claim the role of elder statesman in the front line, not on the stage, in the front line, because I just discovered that I've been around longer than everybody else on the stage. And that means I've seen this before, I've heard it before, and I don't want to hear it again. We know what to do. Question is, are we prepared to do it? I'm here on this occasion for two reasons among going to Kaicho. First reason I'm here is to see whether it is possible to revitalize the hope and the energy that was held out to us by the Jagdeo documents, and to also to provide total support for the initiative and the enthusiasm of President Irfan Ali in trying to get us to do what we know we have to do. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm also here to remind you that there was something called the St. Anne's Initiative. And that was a meeting in St. Anne's in Trinidad, CARICOM meeting, very much like this, in Trinidad, sponsored by, supported by CARICOM, sponsored by the government of Trinidad and Tobago, for one reason, and that reason was to refocus the people of the region to the valuable, or I should say invaluable role that the single market and economy should and have to play if we are to be successful in our initiatives. Today I want to say, unless we accept CARICOM as a proper single market and economy, a lot of these objectives will not be realized. We cannot, as a small economy, fighting against the winds that are buffeting us as they did so poignantly during COVID-19 worst days, to still be operating on the basis you versus me and mine versus yours. On the other hand, if the St. Anne's Initiative, which came into being because at the time when I joined the CARICOM heads of government, the unthinkable was happening. We had taken the single market and economy off the agenda list of CARICOM. At the initiative of Trinidad and Tobago, it was put back on the agenda. And that St. Anne's meeting was to drive us along the line to actually get something done, agree to do it. That initiative is in place. It's on paper. It's among the leaders. We're meeting here today, not after, but during a pandemic, because only this morning I was monitoring the response to some countries and looking at the data of the continued infection at high levels of people responding to the virus. Thank God, the hospitalization is not rising, but the infection levels are rising again. One of the things that I think we've all agreed on, and the experts have told us that, is that what we have experienced in COVID-19 is likely to happen again and to happen more frequently. And for those of us who, in the worst days of COVID-19, heard our private sector saying to us as government, that they could not place an order for a supply of food. And our Ministry of Health could not administer a vaccine even though we had the money to buy it because we could not buy a vaccine. We have been warned. We have been warned. So when we come here now in these salubrious environment, externally and internally in this building, let us remember that amongst us there will be responses that are saying we prefer to protect the status quo of the narrow existing interest as against doing what has to be done to broaden it for the interest of the wider CARICOM people. Let's understand that. So I'm asked to speak, if we had time to speak on all these things, on investments and marketing, for the simple reason that I've been saying that unless we get the appropriate investments, the scale at which we are required to perform will not be achieved. Because the fundamental principle of economics, the economies of scale, will always apply to us. And therefore, Guyana's role in giving CARICOM the opportunity to produce on the scale at which we can produce, to be a participant in feeding ourselves, is important. And that's why I'm here to support this Guyanese initiative, driven by the works of Vice President and President of Guyana as integral leaders in CARICOM. Because while we want to protect our peasant agriculture, while we want to ensure that the current interests are not trampled upon, we must do what has to be done to increase production. But that increase in production is going to do something. It's going to disturb the status quo of the current arrangements. And that is status quo, if it is not on board and in board, is going to dominate the conversation of protection, and we will not get it done. Why do you think President Skerrit is asking you today that he could sell avocado to Europe, but he can't sell it down the road, 100 miles down the road? Why do you think we have so many possibilities of production within a region, COVID or no COVID? But there's no easy movement of these products. A lot of it is the protection of the status quo. But if we accept that the giant step of a single market and economy is to come into being, then it will remove this chronic impediment of talking while knowing that we don't intend to interfere with the status quo. For example, we talked, my colleague and I from Barbados, we talked about this idea of having, within this single market and economy, a single company register, where once a company is registered anywhere in the CARICOM, it is deemed to be registered everywhere in the CARICOM. That is a simple, straightforward way of encouraging entrepreneurial recognition under law, but it will remove a lot of impediment. Simple as that is. And of course, if we are going to produce in significantly increased volumes, we immediately bring into play the question of transport. When we became independent as a federation, that fleeting existence that we had, the Canadian government gave us a gift. And that gift were two vessels, two ships, the Federal Maple and the Federal Palm. And they ran up and down the CARICOM, starting in Jamaica, down to Trinidad, back up. And at no time that I can recall were the people of this region, the CARICOM region, ever better connected and better served. But at the end of the useful life of those ships, they were never replaced. Not because there was no reason to replace them or that the job had been done, but that we, the independents, had not done what had to be done to serve our people. We knew what had to be done. It has never been done. I gather that there are international supporters at this conference. And I will say it here today. If you really want to help CARICOM to do what we are saying that we could do here for the good reasons advanced, one of the best things that you could do is to help the team of governments of the region to fund and have operating within the CARICOM region vessels of that nature so as to bring our people together to travel by sea in an affordable way. Because it has been done, it needs to be done. Goods and services by sea, after by rail, is always the cheapest. There's some specifics that we need to do. Specifics. Phytosanitary guards, we need, yes, to ensure that we don't spread disease unnecessarily among ourselves. But there are not to be barriers to the explosive increases that can come if we move out of the comfort zones that we exist now, but comfort zones for the few at the expense of the many. Ladies and gentlemen, there's so much that we can do, so much that we must do, because food security is not going to come at the time that you need it. The worst time to try to build a fire brigade is during the fire. We have to be cognizant of the conflagration of a fire that could engulf all of us and build it when there is good, fair weather. And that is what will serve us when there's an outbreak of fire. But for that to happen, there has to be a sustained business model. In my meeting with President Ali on Tuesday afternoon, we spoke at length about the need for the business model. What is the business model that we are going to use to bring about this expansion in food supply that will cause us to have a food supply that will survive fair winds and foul, and that will bring us the benefits of that increased production? Because increased production, without proper transportation, proper storage, and of course, agro-processing to ensure that the word glut doesn't become part of the vocabulary, requires a proper business model. And that is why today, representing Trinidad and Tobago, I could say that Trinidad and Tobago is in a position to develop a business model with the potential in Guyana and the potential in CARICOM to have us use energy, use expertise, use our universities to put us in a position to do what has to be done. Nobody is going to come to do it for us. As we said at the beginning of the pandemic, nobody is going to come to our assistance. We have to do it ourselves. And we saw it when Barbados couldn't buy half a dozen ventilators. We couldn't buy a vaccine. Those who had them kept them to themselves. Nobody is going to give us food when food is in short supply. So if we don't put arrangements in place to ensure that whatever the weather, there is food for our people, then who can we blame? We have to do it now, so that when the next time it happens, we will be in a better position, not a worse position. We have to argue effectively and convincingly at the WTO against the current arrangements that work against us. We might be small, but we are not insignificant. We must let our voices be heard. We must let our interests be served. We are aware of what we have to do. It is because we are aware of what we have to do why today in the office of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, you have an advisor, an agricultural advisor, who is a geneticist. Expertise that tells us other people are growing grain and planting things. It doesn't mean that we have to grow the same variety of grain in this region or on these soils. But it is possible to understand the genetics and to get varieties that are suitable for our environment. And that is where our universities come in. The University of Trinidad and Tobago, that is technologically biased. The University of Guyana, the University of the West Indies. Our research now has to be with a fierce urgency of identifying for the producers the varieties that we can produce on scale so that we can supply ourselves with the inputs for animal feed, with the inputs for human oil, consumption of human oils. And therefore, we want to see fields of soy growing within the CARICOM, Belize and Guyana where the acreage is available. We want to see corn being harvested, grown in areas where they can be grown, and of course find themselves in as raw materials being processed for our own food supply. And of course, as we do that, we keep our eyes on other people's needs because we can supply some of their needs as well. It is only a fog in our vision and an absence of our own commitment that can hold us back from doing what we can do and what we must do. And this initiative is probably not the first step, but a giant step in trying to get us to come to the point of identifying business models that we must implement with the support of all those who back us. Make the investments, do what has to be done, and utilize the resources that God has blessed us with within the CARICOM. The least we can do for our people is to do the most that we can do under the circumstances. And that is why Trinidad and Tobago provides full support and hold out the promise of full participation in every effort that is geared towards this very vexing subject of can we or will we feed ourselves. But of course, our people have been so conditioned. Just like the time when you go past the market, not enough breadfruit being consumed, not enough cassava being consumed, not enough dasheen and sweet potato fries being consumed, but they're harassing the government about not enough foreign exchange to buy imported white potato. So yeah, we have to make the dietary changes to fit our ability to feed ourselves, otherwise we are just vassals of other people's problems, masquerading as the wronged and the entitled. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an exciting period. Our young people, some of them here with us today are at school. 2 or 3 years from today, they'll be out in the workplace. They would be required to use the technology that they're being trained in now and the experiences that they're seeing now and the failures that we have had to ensure that their generation does not end up in the same situation, being at the mercy of those on the outside who will not come to our aid in a time of urgency. We have to change the model. We have to change it. But you know, the most aggressive conversations in CARICOM is about movement of people. Movement of people. Last 2 weeks ago, we took to our parliament a piece of legislation to complete this whole question of the handful of skills that we are allowed to move within the region. And what did we experience? We experienced voices within our parliament openly objecting and indicating that this is taking jobs from local people. We have to move away from that to a total commitment to being who we are and doing what has to be done. Otherwise, we'll have more conferences like this in different years other than 2022. And we keep asking ourselves, why not? Today, I would like this conference to place us at a fork in the road. But we take the decision to make the turn in the direction where we commit to an improved production system to give us food sustainability in all conditions, anticipated and unanticipated. I want to thank President Ali and his team and the people of Guyana for the very warm welcome that you have extended to me on behalf of the people of Guyana to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and to let you know that the closest relative you have in the CARICOM is Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.